Thanks for having me today. Thank you, Bernard. I don't know if you're still here. There you are. Thank you for leading us off in a good way and sharing your gift of song with us this morning. So, yeah, that stuff is, work stuff. I'm going to tell you a bit about Cheryl Whiskeyjack, the person. I am one of 4 daughters. My dad raised us on his own because when I was a young girl, our mother passed away. We just came out to Alberta from a beautiful place in Ontario called Manitoulin Island. I always tell people if you ever get a chance to go there, to go, because it's a beautiful place. But my dad said you can't live on scenery, so he put us all in the station wagon and we moved out west when I was just a young girl of 10. So today I want to talk about, I love this topic of natural supports because that's literally what I have had surrounding me. It's literally what I do in my work. It's literally what I do in my personal life. And I want to talk to you about how powerful language is. That society can label us with deficit-based language, like single parents. I talked about my dad raising us on his own. I have to stop saying that because at another event I was at, there was a keynote speaker there that will forever change the way I looked at single parents. It was an Indigenous woman who is the mother of a young boy. And she comes from a very connected family, very culturally rooted. And she referred to herself in front of her parents as a single mom. And her mom looked at her and said, "Quit calling yourself that. You are not a single mom. Your dad spends all kinds of time with his grandson out on the land, teaching him our ways, our stories, our ceremonies, our songs. I spend all kinds of time with him, working on harvesting medicines and how to cook this or how to cook that. Your brother spends all kinds of time with him as well. You are not doing this alone." And it just made me think of growing up with my dad, 4 daughters. 10 was the youngest, 17 was the oldest. So lots of rolling eyes and hormones. That's when he got us on his own. But he put lots of people around us that were there to help him in doing that really important job of raising us. The other word I want to share with you is people who are childless. I don't have children, and sometimes when you get to know me and you see me around kids, you just think I must have 3 or 4 kicking around at home, and I probably do. They're just not mine, because all of my life I have been this auntie, the only one of my 4 sisters that didn't have children, and I am this special auntie to these sisters, kids of mine, because they're busy working, they're busy keeping house, keeping these kids busy, raising them. And I get to help them. That's what my job is. I remember a time when my sister was trying to wean her son off the breast. And he was really mad. I think she made it till he was 3. So he actually could talk and say, "I don't like this. I want that. And you need to give it to me." And she was exhausted. 2 days of very little sleep. 2 days of very little sleep for him as well. And she was exhausted. And so I went over to her house. I said, "Pack a bag. I'm taking him." And she's like, "What?" I'm like, "You are exhausted. He's exhausted. He knows he can't get that from me. And he will get some rest, and you will get some rest." And so very gratefully, she packed an overnight bag for her boy, and I took him home. And guess what? He slept. And guess what? So did she. And the next day, she was ready to fight another day. So I like to tell that story because I am not childless. When my husband and I got together and decided we wanted to start a family, that's when we found out that we couldn't. There's medical reasons why we can't. And so he grew up very traditional. And his grandfather was a medicine man, and he said, maybe we should go through go see a medicine man and see if they can help us. And so we did. We went through this 4-day ceremony with this medicine man. There were things I had to do, ceremonies I had to sit through. There was like some kind of tea I had to drink. And at the end of the 4 days, that old man came up to me and he said, so I'm like 21. He comes up to me and he goes, "You're going to have kids. Lots of kids." And I remember being like, oh my gosh, I just want one or two, not lots of kids. And I think now when I look back, I think that's what that old man was talking about, was all of the kids that have been in my life from that very young age up until today. I call them my littles, and I'm on my second generation of littles, but a third generation has been born. So Bernard talked about being a great grandparent. That's a chop on. I'm a chop on to 3 little ones now. They're just babies. So they're ready when they get old enough to spend time with chop on Cheryl. So language is powerful. It can make you feel not good enough, or it can make you feel incredibly blessed. And so I just am very thankful for the ways we have in our cultural community for kinship ties and for ways of looking at natural supports that allowed us to flourish on this land for many, many years. We had those ways of flourishing because we were very community-minded and everybody had a job. My dad used to tell me that a long time ago, in our community, he said, there were never people like you, meaning people who didn't have kids. And he said, if there was people like you in our community, we had in his family 17 siblings. He was one of 16 siblings. In my mom's family, she was one of 12. So I have well over 100 first cousins from both sides of my family. They're from the same community. And he said, the families were really big. So if there were people like you in the community, or if a mother passed away or someone was sick, whatever, these kids would be like, well, I have 17 here, take 2. And even though, my dad's family was really big, they still took in kids into their family. So there are 3 aunts that I have on my dad's side that are actually, today you would call them foster kids, but we didn't have a foster care system back then. It was just what you did. You took care of kids that needed taken care of. So on my mom's side, there was 6 girls and 6 boys. On my dad's side, there were a whole, I think, 13 aunts and 3 uncles. So my dad was one of only 4 boys. So I want to talk about the role of aunties and how much these women taught me growing up and how they were there to support me as I grew up and developed. We were here in Alberta, and this is where our mom passed away. We're from Ontario. That's where everybody is. And my grandmothers were very, very concerned, when our mother passed away, obviously. Dad has these 4 girls. And my grandma said to him years later, we were all adults by then, I wondered, and she said, but I just want to tell you, you did a wonderful job. And he kind of smiled, and he thought he was in trouble when she said she wanted to talk to him. But he shared the credit with the aunties. So even though they were far away, we still found a way for them to influence. They came out here to visit us. And then we had those aunties here in town that weren't by blood, but they were really good friends of my dad's, who filled in those roles for us when, oh my gosh, did we ever need these women? Trying to talk to my dad about, the things girls go through, and asking for him for money for the things that girls need. And he'd be like, what do you need that for? And so we would tell him, and he'd say, okay, never mind, here you go. Giving us the money to go and get those things that girls need. So having those aunties be able to sort of talk to him about things that we're needing, talk to him about things that we're going through, was really invaluable. And then I became an auntie. I think I was 18 years old when my oldest sister had her first son. And I always say to my sisters, I think I love them more than you. I love my nieces and nephews so much. Like, I literally can't go through any day without thinking about these little boys and little girls. One of them now is a father of 3 girls, and they're just the most precious thing to me. And I think I get that because of what I was modeled growing up from my aunts and my uncles. I used to hate Mother's Day. I hated Mother's Day because I wasn't a mother. And I hated Mother's Day because I didn't have a mother. So when Mother's Day came around, I was just blue all day long. And then I received a teaching from someone who talked about the word for auntie in Cree. And the word for auntie in Cree literally translates in English to little mother. And I never hated Mother's Day again after that, because I learned about this very special role that I have in our family. It's a very sacred role, and a very sacred trust that I have in the upbringing of these kids. I never asked my sisters or sisters-in-law to send me report cards, but every time they get them, they email them to me. And I never ask them to do that. They just do that, which I think is really cool. So I get to, blow it up on my phone and look at how these kids are doing in school. And if they're struggling, that means, I think, my sisters are saying, you need to sit that little guy down and talk to him about what's happening in that class, or you need to sit this little girl down and talk to her about what's happening in school. That's what I take it to mean as well. So obviously celebrating their achievements, but also my job is to help them get through those rough patches. You listen to your aunties very different than you listen to your mom. I'm seeing nods in the crowd, so you know what I'm talking about. And then we have this saying in our cultural community about auntie energy. And in our community, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing. It's kind of like cougars. You all know what cougars are, right? So there's this thing in our community about aunties, and aunties are kind of like that. And I'm not a cougar. I'm happily married. But I am an auntie, and I'm very, very proud of that role. And whenever I celebrate, whenever people joke about this auntie energy or aunties, out on the town or whatever, I always kind of like, yeah, auntie. Auntie's out on the town, and I'm really proud that I am an auntie. And my sisters always go, oh my God, she doesn't get it. At one of our cultural events at Bentero, we had this old man that was there, and he was blind. So he had the white cane, and he was wearing this T-shirt that said, I'm just an uncle looking for an auntie. And I'm like, I'm an auntie. And my sister's like, oh my gosh, just mortified that I actually got a picture taken with the guy, because that's who I am. I actually have a sweatshirt that says big auntie energy on it, because that's what I am. And it must be a vibe I give off, because when I'm out in the community, kids just know I'm a safe person for them. They just know. I've had little kids come up to me in the mall and grab my hand. And then the moms are like, what? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, they just grabbed my hand. I've had little ones at the pool. When I take my little ones to the pool, they boss me around and say, go get me that diving ring, because I'm too scared to go get it. And I'll go and do. And then the parents are like, I'm really sorry. And I'm like, it's okay. Took my niece and her little guy swimming, and there was some little guy that was just following us around the pool all day, like while we were there. And my niece looked at me and she's like, do you know that kid? And I'm like, nope. It's my auntie energy. They just come to me. And I don't know. It's just some kind of vibe that I give off of. So while we were growing up, and I'm 14 years old, just lost my mom. My dad got us involved in these youth groups in the community. Boys and Girls Club was one of them. There was a Métis youth group that we were involved with, and then there was this Christian youth group that we were involved with. All of these women and men that were involved, these youth workers that were involved in, programming for us in the community once a week, I used to look at them and think, wow, what a cool job, you know? And that's what led me down the career path that I eventually went down, which was child and youth care at Grant MacEwan. That's where I studied my post-secondary studies. Wanted to work with Indigenous youth. And when I got out of school, I heard about this really wonderful new organization in the West End of Edmonton that was getting a lot of buzz. They were brand new, started in November of 1994. So next year we're celebrating 30 years of service to Edmonton and area. I came to them in the spring of 1995, so very early on. I'm in my 29th year at the organization, and I met this woman who founded the organization. Her name at the time was Shauna McNichol, and her business partner, Brad Seneca, came up with this idea of starting up this organization that was going to serve Indigenous youth in the West End of Edmonton. They deliberately chose the West End because the core of Edmonton was saturated with services, and they knew that people were living all over the city. And so this is why they chose to start up in the West End. They tried to start this organization. Well, I shouldn't say try. They did. They started this organization in a good way. They had flags and tobacco. They went to elders in the community and they presented those flags and tobacco. They wanted to share their ideas, their hopes, their dreams for what was going to happen with these Indigenous youth, what they were hoping to accomplish with them. And when they went out to this elders' homestead, the old man took Brad into the shed and the old lady took Shauna into the house. So Brad is Indigenous. He's an Anishinaabe. He's from London, Ontario area. Came to Alberta for the same reason that my family did, which was the opportunities that are out here. Shauna was born and raised here in Edmonton, Scottish on both sides of her family. So, but felt a real connection to the Indigenous community because of the work she was doing with the Alberta government at the time. And so when they came to this elder's homestead, and the old lady took her into the house, they were going to share, what their hopes were for this program that they were hoping to start. And when they got into the house, Shauna was like the finer things in life. She always called herself a 5-star camper. She just, she was just like the finer things in life. So she gets into this old lady's house, and she said, "Cheryl," she was preparing a moose's nose for soup, and you wouldn't believe how big a moose's nose is. So they shared what they were hoping to accomplish with these young people, and the old people listened. When they got in their vehicle at the end of the day, they went home, and as soon as they got in and got on the highway, Brad said, "So what did they say?" And Shauna said, "What did he say to you?" They listened, is what they both sort of agreed on, is that they really listened intently on what they were hoping to accomplish with this program that they were going to start. But they didn't encourage them. They didn't say that was the best idea I ever heard. They didn't do any of that. They just listened and nodded. And so, but they also agreed that they weren't discouraged. So they weren't discouraged from starting this program. So they went ahead and started it. And they had tremendous success with the first cohort of youth that they put through. So about 20 youth that went through that first group. It was a 4-month-long program. None of those kids were all, "Oh, happy day to be there" in this program. Someone said, "You will take this program." Could have been a social worker, could have been a foster parent, could have been a group home, could have been their own parent, maybe a probation officer, because a lot of these young people were at risk. But by, I would say, Wednesday, Thursday of that very first week, those kids were all in. And it was just because of the way that Brad and Shauna rolled culture, ceremony, teachings into their practice with these kids. And by the end of the week, they were in their spaces with bright, shiny faces. They were excited to be there every single day. They graduated, I think, 16 out of the 21st cohort of youth, which is like an amazing statistic for those out there who run programs like that. Lots of kids fall off. Other priorities take precedence, or there's issues at home, whatever it is. So to be able to get to the finish line with 16 kids was quite an accomplishment. And for the second cohort, they were oversubscribed. So they had this really long waiting list for the second group. So these young people were out in the community telling their cousins, their friends, there's this program in the West End called Bentero, you should take it. They had this really on the cheap graduation ceremony. It was like a potluck because it was so brand new. We didn't have a big budget, and it was like a potluck. So, this mom brought a turkey, that mom brought mashed potatoes, and we had a feast put together by all of the parents and that were special to these young people. And those elders came, and they felt the hope in the room, they felt the excitement in the room, and they leaned into Brad and Shauna's ear and said, "You guys are doing a really good thing here, and you need to keep doing it." And they looked at him and said, "Really? Because you never said that when we went out to see you that day." And the reason they never said that day was a lot of people talk, and they really wanted to see what Brad and Shauna were going to do. And they literally did everything that they said they were going to do. The name of our organization has a really good story. Bent Arrow came from a time that Brad spent on the land with his grandfather when he was a young boy. And his grandpa shared lots of stories with him, lots of teachings. And he talked about everything a long time ago was a ceremony. Everything we did a long time ago was a ceremony. Everything. As soon as you opened your eyes in the morning, your ceremony started. When you prepared a meal for your family, that was a ceremony. And you wanted to put some love and good thought into what you were going to be preparing for your family, because that was going to nourish them. That was going to give your kids nourishment so that they could learn and grow. That was going to give your husband strength to go out there and do what needed to be due to your family, for your family to live in a good way. And the way I always explain it to people is, when you think of someone in your family, your kukum, your baba, your mom makes the best, whatever, pierogies, cabbage rolls, bannock, whatever, moose nose soup. The reason why it tastes that good is that's her ceremony. Right? That's the love that she put into preparing that meal for your family, and you literally feel it when you're ingesting that food. That's the power of ceremony. When men were building their homes, the homes, the structures that were going to shelter and protect their family, wigwams, teepees, whatever it was, when they were building those, they had to do that with a good heart and a good mind. And they couldn't be distracted. They couldn't be thinking about, their neighbor and how their teepee is bigger than your teepee or whatever. Distracted in such a way. Good heart and good mind was necessary. And if you were distracted or thinking negative thoughts when you're doing that, it could fall over with a good stiff breeze. It could take on rain if it rained. It wouldn't provide that protection and shelter that you wanted your family to feel within it. So it was really important that you did that ceremony of creating your shelter with a good heart and a good mind. Now we get to the hunt, same thing. That was a ceremony. To this day, when people go hunting, they treat that as a ceremony, because if you're successful, if you do a good ceremony, you will have a higher likelihood of having success. That means your family, your community won't go hungry. So you want to do that ceremony with a good heart and a good mind so you can have success. Building your weapons. So can anybody think about what would happen if you shot a bent arrow from your bow? What would happen? Anybody want to guess? That's right. Wouldn't hit your target. It would just go off to the side and it wouldn't hit your mark. Your community could starve. If this arrow doesn't fly straight and hit that deer, hit that moose, or whatever it is that you're hunting. So it was really important to create your weapons with a good heart and a good mind, because they were going to lead to a good hunt. So Shauna and Brad compared the youth that we were going to be serving, that we were hoping to serve in that first program, with bent arrows. Someone didn't put that good energy into these young people, and we were going to do that. We were going to put some love and good energy into these young people so they could fly straight and meet their marks. And I can't think of a better organization to hitch my wagon to than that. Just spoke to me as a brand new practitioner in the field. I'm just looking at my notes. So I talked about how I'm an auntie. And when you're an auntie, you find other aunties in the community that are like you. I'm going to give a shout out to an auntie in the corner over there. Her name is Andrea Watchmaker. There she is. She's waving. She's an auntie like me. And we celebrate each other. She's very proud of her nieces and nephews and grandkids. I don't know. Andrea, are you a chop-on yet? No, not yet. I'm a chop-on. So she has grandkids, she has nieces and nephews, just like me, and we celebrate the heck out of these kids. And there are people like that in the community that I know, that you just sort of become this little community. And I also like to celebrate all the other aunties that are out there. So I have a niece that really is close to me. And she says to me one day, you know, Auntie, you're the best auntie in the whole world. And I said, you know, I have 3 sisters. I said, you know, you have other aunties, not just me. Okay, that just means I'm going to have to use some commas now. I think she was 8 years old when she said that, and it just made me laugh because she knew what commas were and what role they played. Yeah. So as I'm thinking about what I want to do with my life, I knew I wanted to work with youth. I had this dream, and it sounds like a terrible dream. I'm going to tell you about it. I had this dream. It was before I went to Grant MacEwan. I dreamt I was in my home, and I woke up in my home in my dream. And I left my home, and I started walking in the field by my home. And in that field were a bunch of polar bears. And these polar bears were suffering. They were moaning. They were on the ground. They weren't doing well. And I very methodically went to those bears, and I lifted their heads and cut their throats. Isn't that terrible? It sounds so awful. And I didn't have any feeling in my dream as I was doing this. But I just was doing that to these bears one after another. And then I came home and I went back to bed. And as I'm laying in bed in my dream, I'm thinking, yeah, that's not good. Like, I just killed a bunch of bears. And I was laying there feeling like horror, you know, all these terrible feelings at what I had just done. And decided that I wanted to go to the washroom. So I went into the washroom and I flicked on the light. This is still in my dream. And when I flicked on the light in my dream, there was a bloody knife on my vanity in the bathroom. So it just it was real. It wasn't a dream. This is what I'm thinking in my dream. At the same time, in real life, my husband turned on the light in our bedroom because it was time to get up. And that was the light in the bathroom in my dream. So I had this dream very close to me, and I told him every detail I could think of about that dream. And we always like to try and figure out what these dreams mean. And in our communities, things that are white, like you may have heard of white buffaloes, white eagles, like anything that's white in our communities have they're like messengers. They're very sacred to us. So he said, the bears were white. That means that they were very sacred and you were ending their suffering. So it's not a terrible dream. Don't look at it as a terrible dream. It's like you were doing what needed to be done to end suffering. And then I eventually went into Grant MacEwan and met an elder in Grant MacEwan during my studies, shared that dream with them again, and they said, your husband was exactly right. This is talking to you about the path that you're going to be going on, which I really love. I wanted to share that story, that it was for me a sign of my life's work. So I started to talk about Shauna, and I'm going to keep on talking about her and hope that I don't get super emotional. I was blessed to have 12 years with Shauna, who is, I will say, the biggest mentor in my life, professionally and personally. I went for my interview at Ventero when I heard about this organization, and she was very charismatic. She was very engaging, very authentic. She was just all of these wonderful things. And I just gravitated towards her. And whatever she had to share, I soaked it up like a sponge. I wanted to learn everything I could. even the hard stuff, the hard stuff. She taught me a lot of hard lessons as well, because life is not always sunshine and lollipops. There's lots of challenges we have to make our way through. How are we going to do that? So her and Brad grew the organization up until 2006. And in 2006, she had knee surgery. And they make you sign this form, when you're going to get surgery, about the risks. And it's like 1 in 40,000 people could die from the surgery or whatever. Even like getting your wisdom teeth pulled, things like that. She was 1 in 40,000 people. And about 2 weeks after her surgery, when we thought she was on the path to recovery, she just passed away very suddenly from a blood clot that had formed from this surgery that she was on. And she was very well known in the community at the time. Media showed up at Bentero and they wanted to hear about this woman. I couldn't talk about it without crying. It was just such a big loss. She was the face of Bentero, and when you thought about Bentero in the community, you thought of her. And so we had to figure out how we were going to go forward without this very dynamic leader, very close mentor of mine. And I remember the day she passed away. It was the day of our Christmas party at Bentero. And we, of course, didn't have a Christmas party. We just welcomed people at Bentero who heard the news, were very shocked. And that night, my husband said, "You got to go and see Brad." And I'm like, "I don't want to go see Brad." That would make it very real to me, seeing her husband. And so he said, "Nope, you're going. You have to do this." And so him and I went to Brad and Shauna's place, and there was Liz O'Neill, sitting there on the couch with Brad. I will say today, Liz, that what a calming force you were for us in a very difficult time. And in the days and weeks that followed, all of the leaders at Bentero had to rally and continue running this organization because Brad was a ghost. And Liz reached out to me and said, "Whatever you need, Cheryl, you just tell me what you need. If you need to help figuring out a budget, if you need help dealing with funders, whatever it is, you just reach out to me." And I don't know that I ever had to, but just knowing that I could meant the world to me. So I can't stand up here and talk about natural supports without talking about the role that Liz O'Neill played. And to this day, this lady sends me text messages, just random. "Thank you for what you do in our community, Cheryl." And I just love them. I just love getting them. So much respect for this woman and so much appreciation for the role she plays in our community as a leader, and recognizes the role that she has for encouraging and supporting other emerging leaders in the community. So thank you, Liz. Shauna gave me permission to love my kids. I went through child and youth care at Grant MacEwan, and it was this and she went through social work at Grant MacEwan. It was this very sort of Western social work theory, practice, and model that we were taught there. Lots of great things I learned, but one of the things I learned was I wasn't allowed to love my kids. I couldn't talk about that with my instructors. I couldn't talk about it with my colleagues in community because there has to be these professional boundaries that are there, and you're crossing them if you say that word, that L word. And when I met with Shauna and started at Bentero, she gave me permission to love the kids that we were working with. She said, "I don't know how you can do this work and not love the kids that you're working with. And I don't know why our institutions keep saying that that's not a good thing." And I don't think they say it's not a good thing, but they just sanitize it so much that I don't know. I don't understand it. She gave me permission to love my kids, and that's what I did. And it made all the difference. I talk about the importance with our kids to have history and roots and connection, and how important that is for young people to have. And without it, they are unrooted. And we see lots of kids out there, lots of young people, lots of adults who never had that chance to have good connections formed, proper roots put in to the ground that would help you weather any storm that comes through. So the work that we do at Bentero really tries to provide that connection, those roots, and that love that all kids need to grow up strong and be able to withstand everything that's going to be happening. We still do this today because of the encouragement and teachings that Shauna and Brad gave us at Bentero. I don't know what year it was, 2014. I'm on Twitter, and I saw a tweet from Edmonton Public Schools saying that we have 9 new schools in Edmonton that are going to be built in the next couple of years, and we need names. So if you can think of someone you'd like to nominate, please, fill out this form and send it in. And without thinking, I just filled it out and I nominated Shauna. And about a year later, totally forgot I did this, I get this call saying she got picked. So one of the 9 schools that was going to be built was going to have her name. And that school's been operating, and we still have a very good connection to the principal. I met a principal here this morning who's at Brightview. Yeah, there you are. And so another principal at Brightview actually became the principal over at Shauna May Seneca School. It always makes me smile when I get an email from them. We read to them every October when they have Reading Week, and they must do this really amazing job of telling her story, because whenever we go there to read, we are like rock star adjacent, because we work at Bentero, and we're super rock star adjacent if we actually knew Shauna. So some people there never got to meet her. Some of the readers that go there actually got to work with Shauna and be led by her, and so those kids are like, wow, just amazed. And so that was my way of like honoring my mentor. Shauna was to be able to do that. Shauna taught me a lot. My aunties taught me a lot. This is literally my life's work. And for those of you that are mentors, thank you. You don't even know how much of an impact. I mean, you probably are told. I think this organization does a great job of making sure people understand the impact that mentoring has. But to the young people that you're doing it for, I don't know that you'll ever know, or maybe someday, 10 years, 15 years down the road, you'll learn about the impact that you had on young people by being a mentor. So thank you for what you do. Remember who your mentors are. Remember what they taught you. My nephew, who graduated from minor hockey a year and a half ago, is now a coach. And he was talking to my sister about how he thinks his team was tiered wrong. She thought he was talking about the Oilers. And he said, yeah, we won 10-1. And she's like, wow, really? Thinking the Oilers won 10-1. And he's like, no, my kids. He's 19 years old and he's coaching hockey. So clearly his hockey coaches had a really huge impact on him, and knowing what it takes to raise up these kids in minor hockey. He never aspired to be AAA. He just liked getting out there and playing fun and having fun with the game, and that's what he really wants to do with these kids. So do what your mentors taught you. The circle continues when you do, and mentored people will mentor. And that's what I wanted to share with you this morning. Thanks for having me. I made it.